Hey bees! Today's lightweight, ultra-hydrating emulsion was the result of a bit of a formulating happy accident. I was aiming to create a lightweight, summery, natural body yogurt, but when it was done, it was silky and glossy instead of wobbly and jiggly. So definitely not like a yogurt, but kinda like a custard, and so body custard. This perfect for summer emulsion stars two natural lightweight emollients and glides across the skin beautifully. A little goes a long way, leaving your skin feeling hydrated and refreshed. We're going to make a 120 gram batch today, which will fill a 4-ounce container nicely. If you'd like to scale this formulation up or down, you absolutely can. Check out my video and blog post on formulating with spreadsheets to learn how. And if you are looking for information on substitutions, shelf life, where to buy ingredients, and more, please read the partner blog post, it's all there. We'll start by weighing out the ingredients for our heated phases. You'll need 94.07 grams of distilled water, and then we'll add our tiny amount of water-soluble dye straight to the water. You need 0.12 grams, but that might not register on your scale very well. I'm using red 40, which is a bit granulated or chunky, so I ended up using about 3 of the little granules for this batch size. You really do not need much at all, as these dyes are incredibly potent, so err on the side of too little rather than too much. The color is optional, just use 94.08 grams of distilled water if you want to leave it out. The dye is also the only not natural ingredient in this formulation, so if you leave it out, this formulation is 100% natural. 7.2 grams of sodium lactate adds some great non-tacky humectant-y goodness and raises the pH, balancing out the acidity of the preservative we're using in this formulation. Our preservative is Geogard Ultra. You'll need 1.8 grams. This preservative causes the pH of our formulations to drop quite a lot, so I've intentionally paired it with basic sodium lactate to create a formulation that shouldn't need much pH adjusting, if any. The last ingredient in our heated water phase is 2.4 grams of hydroxyethylcellulose. If you've watched other videos where I use gums, you'll know I generally prefer to put them in the heated oil phase so they don't clump, but I feel like hydroxyethylcellulose doesn't hydrate quickly enough once the phases are combined, so I've been putting it in the heated water phase lately. Because this formulation has a pretty high electrolyte load thanks to the sodium lactate, I don't recommend using an electrolyte sensitive gelling ingredient like polyacrylate cross-polymer 6, also known as Cepamax-Zen, or Aristoflex AVC instead. You want to stick to natural gums, though I recommend choosing something that you like the feel of, given we're using a pretty good amount of it, and that feel is definitely going to come through in the final product. Up next, we'll weigh out the 4 ingredients that make up the heated oil phase. You'll need 1.8 grams of Montanov 202. This is our natural emulsifier, but if you don't have it, you could use glycerol stearate and PEG 100 stearate instead. 8.4 grams of silky raspberry seed oil is our star emollient, and this bottle was a gift from Berry Beautiful. If you don't have raspberry seed oil, I'd recommend using a different lightweight liquid oil instead. Cranberry seed oil and apricot kernel oil would both be lovely and would keep that fruity, summery theme. 2.4 grams of lightweight isoamyl laurate keeps things fast absorbing and slippy while boosting emollients. You could swap this ingredient for a different lightweight ester like cocoa caprolate, or simply use more raspberry seed oil instead. And lastly, 1.2 grams of cetyl alcohol adds a silky viscosity boost to the formulation. If you would like to learn more about cetyl alcohol and why I love it so dearly, please check out the ingredient deep dive I did on it. And if you don't have it, you could try cetyl alcohol instead, but this will make for a richer, less silky final product. Now that we've weighed out the ingredients for our heated phases, we're going to combine the ingredients for the heated oil phase and the heated water phase in 2 separate heat-resistant glass measuring cups or beakers. You can pre-distribute the hydroxyethylcellulose and the sodium lactate if you want to, but I've found that it hydrates just fine in the water phase without that step, so I'm not bothering. Before we move on to heating, weigh the water phase and note that weight so you can replace any water lost to evaporation during heating. With this emulsion, I'm going to put the water phase on the heat about 15 minutes before I put the oil phase on the heat. As the water phase is larger, it'll take longer to heat, and the raspberry seed oil is rather delicate, so I'm giving the water phase a head start. I'm using my hot plate on low for this formulation, but you could absolutely use a water bath if you don't have a hot plate, or if you're using measuring cups that can't go directly on a heat source. If you'd like to learn more about the hot plate I have, there's an entry on it in the Humblebee and Me Encyclopedia in the equipment section. Once both phases are the same temperature, the Geogard Ultra has dissolved, and the ingredients in the heated oil phase have melted, remove your beakers from the heat. Weigh the water phase and refer to the weight you wrote down earlier. Add just enough hot distilled water to bring the weight back up to what it was before. Pour the water phase into the oil phase, stir to combine, and then grab your immersion blender. Blend the emulsion for about a minute and then switch to hand stirring. Once the emulsion has gained some viscosity, you can reduce the frequency of your stirring and weigh out the cool down phase. The cool down phase is just 2 ingredients. 0.24 grams of vitamin E helps delay rancidity, and 0.48 grams of spearmint essential oil gives this formulation a light, fresh scent. Incorporate the cool down phase by adding a dollop of the now cool emulsion to the dish or beaker containing your cool down phase. Whisk to combine and then transfer that back to the parent batch and stir until uniform. Now all that's left is checking the pH of the emulsion to make sure that it's in a good spot for our skin and our preservative before we package it up. To do this, weigh 2 grams of the emulsion and 18 grams of distilled water into a small dish or beaker and whisk to combine. This creates a 10% solution. Use your pH meter to check the pH of that solution, and you can learn more about the pH meter I have in the Humblebee and Me DIY Encyclopedia's equipment section. The pH should fall in the 4.6 to 5 range, which is great. If it's lower than about 4.5, you'll want to raise it, and if it's higher than 6, you'll want to lower it. For more information on pH testing and adjusting, please read the partner blog post. I've included lots of helpful links in it. Now that we know the pH is in a good place for our skin and our preservative, it is time to package it up. I'm using a 100-gram frosted soft squeeze tube from Humblebee, which was a gift. This 120-gram batch was just a bit too much for this tube, so I used the leftovers to top off the 100-gram batch that I made for the blog. So averaging that out, I think a 110-gram batch of this emulsion would be perfect for this particular tube. Use this emulsion as you'd use any lotion, but start with less than you think you'll need. A little goes a long way, and if you over-apply, it can feel tacky. This formulation should last at least a year before the raspberry seed oil oxidizes. If you'd like to check out 6 lotion making myths you might believe, click here. And if you'd like to make a matching raspberry mint emulsified body butter to go with this raspberry mint body custard, click here and you can have all the pseudo-dairy products for your skincare. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye.